I only took the graveyard shift at the convenience store because it worked around my college schedule. The space was cramped. Just 3 rows of junk food, a refrigerator unit that never stopped humming, a lottery sign losing its color, and a single restroom in the rear that always carried a faint scent of bleach and something more ancient. Most nights, crawled past in slow motion, restock a few items, clean the counter, fake studying, listen to the clock tick so loudly it felt like a pulse. But that night didn't crawl. Twisted. Rewrote everything. It began like any other. Just past midnight, the bell above the entrance let out its weary ring. I glanced up from my notes. A man entered, maybe in his late 30s. Unkempt beard, clothes frayed and thin as if he'd been wearing them for a week. He kept his gaze low, his shoulders tense, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He drifted through the aisles like he'd forgotten how to shop normally. He lifted a candy bar, returned it, picked up a different one, put that one back, too. He wasn't browsing, he was assessing. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, forcing a neutral tone. My voice bounced around the vacant shop, unnaturally loud in the quiet. He shot me a look, his eyes keen and narrowed. "Just looking," he grumbled, his voice rough. He snatched a soda and brought it to the counter. I scanned it and he paid with wrinkled cash, avoiding eye contact. As he turned to go, he stopped. "Hey, the restroom. You have one?" "Yeah, in the back. Need the key." I passed him the large plastic tag. "We used to keep it from being stolen." He gave a single nod and vanished down the back hall. I tried to return to my textbook, but something about him lingered. The way his eyes kept darting to the windows, the way his jaw clenched and unclenched, like a man waiting for something or someone to arrive. 10 minutes went by, then 15. No sound of a toilet, no running water, no noise at all, just the drone of the lights and the persistent buzz from the cooler. I stood there trying to talk myself out of being nervous. The overnight shift makes you see things. That's what everyone says. Still, I walked to the back. "Everything all right in there?" I called through the door. Silence. I knocked, more firmly. "Sir." Nothing. The quiet felt dense and heavy. Cold dread filled my stomach. I fetched the master key from the office. My hands were shaking without my permission. When I turned the lock and swung the door open, I expected to find him on the floor, maybe from an overdose or just unconscious. But the room was vacant, the light on, the sink dry, the toilet unused, and the key tag was placed precisely on the counter. He hadn't walked past me. He couldn't have slipped out the front. I would have heard it. The door had an ancient, rusted hinge that shrieked every time it opened. My gaze lifted to the window above the toilet, far too small for anyone to fit through. Locked. Then a faint thump from above. I went still. The ceiling was made of those flimsy drop-in tiles. Thin white squares sitting on a metal grid, the kind a person could easily lift with one hand. My heart hammered. I stared up at the tiles, looking for any misalignment, any hint of motion. Nothing. I retreated slowly, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, then hurried back to the front counter and pulled up the security feed. I rewound the tape. There he was, stepping into the bathroom, the door shutting behind him. No one ever exited. Another thump, louder this time, coming from directly above me. I jumped back so suddenly my chair clattered to the floor. The panel above the counter. Was it dipping a little? Or was that just fear? I grabbed for the phone, thinking of calling my boss, but what would my explanation be? Man vanished, and now my ceiling is making sounds. I sounded crazy even to myself. I tried to busy myself by refilling the chip rack, but every crinkle of a bag sounded like shifting overhead. The store felt overly bright, too hollow, too vulnerable. Then the doorbell chimed again. I whirled around, my pulse racing, but this time it was a police officer. He stepped in as if he were just stopping for a coffee, but his eyes swept the store with clear intent. "Evening," he said. "You see a guy come in here? Scruffy beard, around 6 foot, drives a blue sedan." My throat tightened. Yeah, he was here. Bought a pop, used the bathroom, and then he just disappeared. Disappeared. The cop's brow furrowed. His car's still parked outside. Matches a bulletin from earlier. He assaulted 2 people down the road. A clerk and a customer. It was bad. The buzzing fluorescent lights suddenly felt deafening. He asked for the bathroom key. I checked when he was in there too long, but he was just gone. The cop's face grew stern. Show me. I led him to the restroom. He examined the small room, then looked up. These panels lift right out. I heard noises up there. I whispered, my voice thin. He stepped onto the toilet and pushed a ceiling tile aside, shining his light upward. Police, if you're up there, show yourself now. For a moment there was only silence, then a sudden, frantic scrambling. The officer drew his weapon, shouting another command. I staggered back, nearly falling as I rushed into the hallway. Then chaos exploded. Heavy thuds, strained grunts, a shower of dust falling like powder. The man had been up there, hiding, moving around in the space above me the whole time. Other officers arrived, just as a ceiling tile shattered downward and the man tumbled through, landing on the floor in a tangled mess before desperately getting to his feet. His eyes found mine, savage and desperate. He charged. I screamed. The cop tackled him hard, bringing him down just feet from where I was standing. The fight was fierce. Yells, swearing, the sound of struggle on the tile. Stay down, the officer roared. It's over. When they finally cuffed him and pulled him to his feet, he twisted his head toward me, his expression icy with rage. You should have just left me alone. He spat as they dragged him out into the dark. They later discovered a knife in his pocket, one he hadn't used yet, one he had absolutely intended to. Turned out his name was Robert Hayes. He'd been running for weeks, moving from place to place, hiding in ceiling spaces to rob stores after hours, sometimes doing worse. The assaults from that night were severe. The news later reported the gas station clerk might never be the same. The police told me bluntly that he was waiting for me. She was alone. He had told them. An easy target. I quit a few days later and never returned. But the detail that haunts me, after it was all over, when we were cleaning up, I saw it. A single dark footprint, pressed into the dust above the bathroom, directly over the spot where I usually stood to restock shelves. He had been crawling around up there, watching through the vents, perhaps even watching me. Now, whenever I'm in a quiet building, I look up because ceilings aren't just ceilings to me anymore. They're potential spaces. And sometimes someone is already up there waiting. I was cleaning the counter at the small convenience store where I worked the late shift. The sort of job you take when you're young and broke, scrambling for tuition. The building was hardly more than a rectangle with 3 narrow aisles, a refrigerator unit humming in the back, and a flickering neon sign in the window that buzzed like a trapped fly. Nights were typically silent, a heavy silence sometimes. A few drunk guys needing cigarettes, a trucker stumbling in for coffee, the odd kid attempting to pocket candy. The same cycle, the same stillness, the same isolation. I hadn't worked there long, but the days had already started to merge. Mop the floor, fill the chip rack, check the milk dates, pretend not to notice the odd noises from the stockroom, lock the doors at dawn. It was all automatic by then. But that night, that specific night, everything tilted on its axis. A change my nerves felt before my mind understood. The bell above the door rang softly around midnight. I looked up from the textbook I was supposedly studying but really just used as a prop to seem occupied. A man walked in. Normal. That was my initial impression. Normal in the way that makes people utterly unremarkable. You only understand later that unremarkable is its own specific threat. He appeared to be in his mid-30s. Neat hair, simple coat, a face that could vanish into any group. He moved through the aisles, slowly running his fingers over items without truly seeing them, lifting a candy bar, returning it, gazing at the shelves with an unnatural calm. I watched him the way you do when you're by yourself at night with no one to talk to or use as a shield. Finally, he came to the counter with nothing in his hands. "Excuse me," he said quietly, but there was a tension coiled beneath the quiet. "My car died just outside. Is there a phone I could use?" We had an old payphone out front, but it had been broken for weeks. I gestured to the one behind the counter. "You can use this. Just make it quick." "What's wrong with your car?" "It just won't turn over," he said. He gave a smile, but his eyes were vacant. They remained empty, distant, almost practiced. "Must be the battery." He dialed a number, angling his body away from me. He spoke in a hushed tone, too hushed. I caught nothing but a low mumble. When he hung up, he released a sigh that sounded expertly designed to elicit pity. No answer. My buddy must be out cold. "Listen, could you possibly come take a quick glance at the car? I just need a second opinion." My gut clenched. Store rules were clear. Never leave the building on shift. And every fiber in my being was screaming, "Don't go. Don't be a fool. Don't put yourself in a box you can't escape." But he seemed benign, weary, sheepish, and the parking lot was only a few yards away, lit up and open. "I'm not good with engines," I said, praying he'd drop it. "Please," he insisted, not frantic, measured. Just one look. Against every internal alarm I possessed, I nodded. "Okay, 1 minute." I locked the cash drawer, snatched my keys, and followed him outside. The night air felt sharper than it should have. The lot was deserted save for his vehicle. A dark sedan parked near the treeline, right where the overhead lights didn't penetrate. That should have been the next red flag. The first was him. He lifted the hood. I peered in at the engine, feigning knowledge. "Maybe the battery terminals are corroded," I said, because it was a phrase I'd heard before. And then I felt it, cold, unyielding, pressed against my side. I glanced down. A knife, long, catching the faint light like a sliver of a pale moon. My breath caught, my entire system seizing up. "Get in the car," he whispered. The softness had vanished. His voice was flat iron. Not a sound. "What? Why? Please, I..." "Shut up," he hissed. "Move." He forced me toward the passenger side. My thoughts raced. Scream. Run. If I made a noise, he'd use the knife. He was too near, too collected, too certain. He pushed me into the seat. Got in the driver's side. The blade stayed visible inches from my ribs. He turned the key. The engine roared to life immediately. The breakdown was a ruse. We pulled out of the lot and onto a dark road that sliced through barren woods. My heart beat so fiercely I could taste it. "Where are you taking me?" whispered. "Please just let me out. I won't tell." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something I knew in the severe line of his jaw. "You know me," he said. "Don't you?" School. My mind raced, sorting through old faces. A hallway. A ghost of a memory. "Ken?" I choked out. "Ken Morgan." He didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. We drove for only a few minutes, but it felt like a lifetime before he turned onto a gravel path. A chasm opened before us. An old quarry, abandoned, soundless, swallowing the car's beams like a throat. He cut the engine. "Get out." The knife dug into my back as he guided me toward a bare patch of earth and rock. Dread eclipsed everything else. I begged. I cried. None of it registered. He shoved. I went down. And then the universe shattered into pure horror. I won't recount the specifics. The violation. The way he kept the blade in sight, the way his breathing shifted, the way the sky above seemed a vast, cruel joke. When he was done, he stepped away, chest heaving. You're not going to let me go," I stated. He looked down. "No." The first stab was a burst of white-hot agony. Then another and another. My body convulsed with each entry. My mind shrieked. My hands clawed at the air. I was being unmade from the inside. When he finally Stepped back, I let my body go slack. I forced my lungs to still. I let my eyelids droop. I played dead. He stared at me for a long minute, his face a mask. Then he turned, walked to the car, got in, and drove away. The quiet that followed was unnatural, dense, choking, interrupted only by my own ragged, gurgling breaths. Blood-soaked, my clothes warm and sticky. I pressed my trembling hands against the cuts. I didn't know which were lethal. I didn't dare to know. Move. A command surfaced from deep within. Move or you will die here. I rolled onto my side. Pain erupted, so blinding I nearly lost consciousness. Gravel bit into my flesh, clinging to the blood. I crawled. I hauled myself forward inch by painful inch, fighting through the fire in my nerves, through the dread that he might circle back. At the rim of the pit, I saw it. A single, dim porch light. A house. Hope was a fresh, different kind of agony. I dragged myself over the grass, marking a path darker than the ground. My arms shook. My sight flickered. I reached the steps, lifted a hand, and knocked. Help! I croaked. Please help! The door flew open. A woman shrieked. A man appeared behind her. They hauled me inside, swaddled me in blankets, held cloths to my wounds. Sirens wailed in the distance, threading through the trees like a promise. The paramedics came. Voices, touches, bright lights, a helicopter, the world swimming in and out of focus. In the hospital, the last words I heard before going under were a voice saying, multiple penetrating wounds. Prep the OR. When I surfaced days later, detectives were there. I told them the whole story. The store, the deception, the quarry, the name. They caught him quickly. He admitted to everything. The trial was its own particular hell. But I looked at him. I said what had to be said. He was given life. But the marks remained. Years went by. I healed in body, in spirit. The latter took longer. But I returned to my studies, got a degree in psychology, aided other people who had lived through nightmares. I wrote a book. I moved away. I volunteered. I built a life. And that night, what he tried to steal from me, it transformed. It became a lesson, an ember, a testament that malice doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it looks average, courteous, calm. Sometimes it enters your store at midnight, needing a favor. If you're ever in a place like that, listen to the part of you that whispers that something is off, could be what keeps you alive. I hadn't been at the little gas station on the town's outskirts for long. Just enough time to learn the floor plan, the familiar faces, and the monotonous tempo of nights that blurred together. It stood isolated on a quiet part of the highway, bordered by empty fields and thick trees that consumed the pavement after dark. We were open around the clock, the sort of stop for truckers battling sleep, factory workers grabbing a soda, or the odd traveler passing through with a history they preferred to keep to themselves. I took the job for the school money, and the owner wasn't one to pry. The overnight shift came with a slight bump in pay, and I told myself I could endure the tedium and harsh lights if it meant my tuition was covered. But that one night, that single shift permanently altered my understanding of the dark. My shift partner phoned in sick an hour before start, leaving me by myself. The manager dismissed it, said it was common, told me he'd call later, which typically meant he'd doze off and forget. Past midnight, the place sank into that peculiar hush unique to desolate spots. The refrigerators droned on, the fluorescents buzzed above, and outside, the pumps stood under the stark white awning like forgotten scenery. Not one customer came for gas between 1 and 1:30 a.m. I found tasks, refilling the cigarette racks, lining up candy bars until they were perfectly straight, cleaning the counter just to keep my hands moving. Each time I looked at the clock, only a minute had crawled by. The kind of night where the quiet had weight, as if it was holding its breath for something. At 1:32, the door alarm sounded. A man entered, stocky, solid build, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s. His jacket was dark and faded. His jeans were smudged with dirt. His hair cut short and practical. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't say a word, didn't pause. He just melted into the aisles, heading toward the rear. I said hello. Anyway, from pure routine. He gave no reply. Something in his motion, purposeful, calm, made me look at the tiny security screen above the counter. I watched him pick out a pack of energy drinks, then some chips, then double back once as if he was verifying something. He finally came to the register, setting his items down in silence. Then he added a box of condoms, dropping at last like a period at the end of a sentence. I scanned everything. $12.40, I told him. He gave me cash, then cocked his head a little as he read my name tag. Elena, he said, drawing it out. That's a nice name. How do you pronounce it? Elena. I nodded. Yes. He held onto the name. Elena, as if tasting it. When he didn't budge, I tried pushing his bag toward him. That's when he rested his weight on the counter. You here all by yourself tonight? My insides coiled. The manager's rule was firm. Never admit you're alone. No. I lied immediately. My coworkers in the stockroom. He smiled, but it was a hollow gesture. Oh, really? He murmured. Didn't spot anyone else when I walked in. He leaned in closer. Must get pretty isolated out here by yourself. It's manageable, I said, aiming for nonchalance. You have a good night. He stayed put. You got a man, Elena? He asked. Someone to walk you home after a shift like this? My heartbeat sped up. That's private. He gave a low chuckle, a sound that felt like a physical cold. Just being friendly. Lucky fella if you do. Real lucky. His tone changed, dipping into something menacing. Unless I can take his place. My breath caught. I managed. Take your bag and leave. He stood up straight, his gaze locked on me. You know, he said quietly, I've been sitting out there since midnight. You look real nice behind that counter. So tell me, are you scared of me yet? His question petrified me. Asterisk, watching me from where? For how long? Asterisk. Outside the windows, the pumps were still vacant. The highway was a black ribbon. I had scanned it countless times and seen nothing. You need to go, I said louder, pushing the words past the constriction in my throat. And then, then the door chime rang out again. A bunch of guys tumbled in, noisy and joking, smelling like beer and aftershave, clearly coming from a late party. They made a beeline for the coolers. The man glanced back, the tension snapping. He snatched his bag, gave me one last look, something indecipherable but piercing, and walked out without another sound. Didn't exhale until the door clicked shut. The group paid and left a few minutes later. The moment they were gone, I locked the door for a security check and called my manager, my voice trembling. He told me to keep it locked until a real customer showed up. He'd send someone at dawn. The remainder of the night inched forward. Every shape outside looked like him. Every pair of headlights on the road made me flinch. Didn't unlock the door again until the horizon began to glow with early light. When my replacement came at 6, I only briefly brought it up, just enough to shift the heavy stone in my chest. I didn't want to seem hysterical. I didn't want to seem frightened, but I was terrified. On my drive home, drained but jittery, I pulled into the all-night diner for some coffee. And that was when my stomach plummeted. Near the door, pinned to the public bulletin board, was a sheriff's department notice. The face on it was his. Same short hair, same gaze, same sturdy frame, wanted for questioning in connection with several assaults on women. One at a highway rest area 15 miles from my gas station. One woman reported he had watched her for some time before he approached. Another said he asked if she was by herself. My hands were unsteady as I called the number on the flyer. Officers came to see me later that day. I gave them every detail. His tone, his probing, the timestamp on the receipt, the way he fixated on my name tag. They took their notes. They asked for the store's surveillance tape. They told me he was focusing on solitary women at night, at gas stations, in parking lots, anywhere there was no one else nearby. Handed in my notice within the week. I relocated to a larger city, found a morning job at a coffee shop with big windows facing a busy sidewalk and customers constantly coming and going. But even now, even after all this time, I can't stop the cold dread whenever I drive by an isolated gas station after sunset. I can't see empty pumps without wondering who might be waiting in the shadows. And every time I remember that night, one thought strikes me with the most force. What if those guys hadn't stumbled in at that precise second? Because in my soul I know precisely how near the edge I was, and how simply I could have been another photograph on a notice stapled to a board.